We were detained. It felt like an arrest when we were filming in Hugo Chavez's birthplace. And for some reason, someone had thought we were misbehaving or filming things we shouldn't have filmed. Very heavy security guys came in, all with rifles and night goggles, all in black. Quite a frightening team. And they ordered us to open all our bags. They photographed everything. One of them asked who I was. They said, he's Michael Palin, he's a comedian from England. He looked me up on YouTube. And I said, well, look up some of Monty Python. And they found the fish slapping dance, and that was great because they couldn't resist that. And all their rifles shook and they had to take off their night goggles and mop their brows. And they knew then that we were safe. So always travel with a fish slapping dance in your bag.
It's Michael Palin. If you hadn't guessed already, that's him, combining two of his big claims to fame, being a founding member of Monty Python, the greatest comedy troupe of all time, and his decades hosting some of the most compelling travel documentary series ever created. His latest, at age 82, took him to Venezuela just before the Trump administration overthrew President Maduro there. I am beyond thrilled to have him as our guest on this episode of Explore, a Canadian Geographic podcast. Before we get to Michael, a quick reminder. The 5th annual Canadian Geographic Polar Plunge is taking place on Sunday, March 8th in icy ponds, rivers, lakes, and oceans right across Canada. It's all for a great cause, supporting Canadian Geographic storytelling, expedition grants, research grants, education programs. In this elbows up moment, there is no better way to show your Canadian pride than by supporting the work of Canadian Geographic and its mission of making Canada better known to Canadians and the world. To participate or donate, go to rcgs.org/Polar Plunge 2026. And did you know that Michael Palin has done a polar plunge? Here he is describing it to me.
And one of the greatest things, I did an Arctic plunge. I did actually go and submerge myself in the Arctic Ocean. I was intolerable for at least 3 hours, telling everybody, oh yeah, I've done that, I've been there, done that, yeah. So I can understand it's one of those things that gets into your system and make you feel terrific.
So don't take it from me, folks. Take it from Michael Palin. rcgs.org/Polar Plunge 2026. Along with Arctic plunges, Michael Palin has also starred in hilarious movies like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, The Life of Brian, A Fish Called Wanda, The Death of Stalin. His travel series include Around the World in 80 Days, Pole to Pole, Full Circle, Sahara, Himalaya, many, 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 many more. They are incredible to watch because of his palpable fascination with travel, our world, and the people who make it up. He's also written multiple best-selling books, including a fascinating history of Erebus, one of the 2 ships in the doomed Franklin expedition in the Canadian Arctic. He's also an Honorary Fellow of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society and winner of 2 RCGS medals, including the first Louis Kamoukak Medal, honoring the late great Inuit historian. We get into that and lots more here, so let's get to Michael Palin. Michael Palin, a very big welcome to the Canadian Geographic Explore podcast.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. My dad was a Python fan. I was raised on Python. And in high school, all my friends had the albums and the cassettes. And
we've ruined the education of many people across the world. There's a particular fondness for Canada because I think Canadian Broadcasting were the first people outside the UK to take Monty Python back in 1969-70. CBC eventually realised what they were putting on and thought that they couldn't do this anymore, so they took it off. And there's some wonderful photos of people protesting in the absolutely bitterly cold weather in Toronto, saying, bring back Monty Python. Very fond of Canada.
Yeah, no, long association. I think you guys did your first North American stage tour was right across.
We did, yeah. Not altogether successful.
No.
Very good in Toronto and very good in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Not so good. We went to Regina, Saskatchewan, and all that sort of place, and somewhere else where it was actually cancelled. Yeah,
I think Saskatoon. I was reading.
It was Saskatoon, and one of the letters was missing on the airport building. So I thought this is serves them right.
Not a good sign.
One of the O's had fallen down.
Now, I remember reading, I don't know if you remember this, but your props truck didn't make it to Calgary, so you wound up having to look for a dead dead parrot like hours before the show in Calgary.
And I wish to complain about this parrot what I purchased not half an hour ago from this very boutique.
Oh yes, the Norwegian blue. What's wrong with it?
I'll tell you what's wrong with it. It's dead, that's what's wrong with it.
No, it's resting, look.
Yes, it's not easy to find a dead parrot in Calgary after 5 o'clock.
No.
Actually, we wanted a real parrot, but still, anyway, not to worry. We didn't get one in the end, so we had to use one of John's slippers, I think.
We're about to have a moon launch again here, which got me thinking. Python launched right around Apollo 11. It was that same summer. And I looked up your diaries. Can I just read you the quote from your diary? I'm not sure if you'll remember this. So this was the diary for the Apollo launch. So it says, after lunch, we watched Apollo 11 blast off on its trip to the moon. Ended up the afternoon pouncing about in mouse skins for a documentary about people who like to dress up as mice.
Yeah. You can see what was important to us, I'm afraid, then.
I thought that's absolutely perfect.
Yeah, we were filming the Python series at that time, yeah.
Yeah, you sort of wonder. I just interviewed a Canadian astronaut about Artemis. He said there is something about a moon launch or moon mission that sort of gets people dreaming big. And I wonder if that was, do you wonder if that was in the zeitgeist at the times for you? Or?
Oh, very much. It may not be. I think the thing is, when events are so extraordinary and huge and consequential, it's very hard to put them in a diary. And my diaries are really about my daily, a record of my daily life. And so a lot of it is just what happened to me that day.
Yeah.
But it was hugely exciting. I remember sitting with Terry and watching, I think in the evening, the first pictures came through. And I mean, that's a small step for mankind and all that. No, a small step for man, a great leap for mankind. That resonated through us, really. It was you felt something really had changed and we'd done something that we could all be proud of, although we were, I'm not actually part of the thing, but that it's something that elevated our mood and our feelings at that time.
So right around then, the lumberjack sketch was, I think, there was an episode called Wither Canada.
I wanted to be a lumberjack, leaping from tree to tree as they float down the mighty rivers of British Columbia. The giant redwood, the larch, the fir.
So Canadians,
yes,
we were looking for any reference to Canada all the time from our neighbors and our former colonial masters and all that.
Yeah, you shouldn't need to, really. You're such a big country and there's so much going on and so much has come out of Canada. Unfortunately, a lot of it's come out of Canada rather than staying in Canada. I'm thinking a lot of great comedians. Saturday Night Live was virtually staffed by Canadians.
Yeah, Lorne Michaels is Canadian.
Lorne Michaels,
Dan Aykroyd.
Dan Aykroyd, yeah. So, anyway, that's enough. Praise of Canada.
But John Geiger, who you know, head of the RCGS, recently there was an auction of all sorts of Python clothing and costumes and props and stuff like that. And he bid on the lumberjack costumes. And
yes. Yeah. Does he wear it?
He did. He wore the Mountie outfit, which I think Terry Gilliam had worn. Yeah.
Okay, I hope they'd washed it since then. But that's great to know. Some continuity in the world.
He cuts down trees, he eats his lunch, he goes to the lavatory.
Yeah, we've got it. And we've got the lyrics handwritten out. I don't know.
Oh, yes. I remember writing the lyrics and sending them off,
So we've got all that. It's in a glass case in the front lobby of our CGS headquarters alongside there's sleds that polar explorers took to the North Pole 120 years ago. So you're in very good company.
Oh, we're just fortunate.
I saw you speak at our CGS headquarters probably 7 years ago when you did your Erebus book. A big chunk of that was on the Franklin expedition. And
yes.
You spent time actually in the Arctic traveling through. And I'm just wondering what stands out for you from that voyage for you up at the top of the world?
I suppose it was the scale and the distances. I think I went on the journey after I'd written Erebus. It was just seeing for myself the places that I'd written about and heard about from various journals.
Yeah.
And I think one of the first places we stopped, it wasn't actually snowbound. It was a place called Beachy Island.
Very famous.
And it was just a very bleak place. It was a rocky headland. There were very, very stony gritty foreshore. But there were 4 graves actually, of people who had died on the voyage thus far because there'd been some food poisoning. No one's quite sure what happened to them. But there, to find these graves in the middle of this sort of completely barren waste was very moving. And of course, you realised that, I suppose, the ground itself had been frozen for so long, it's preserved the bodies, and the actual very basic minimal covering of stones for each grave was still there. And I thought, wow, these guys so very far from home who died before they even reached anywhere near the Northwest Passage. And there they were. So that was quite something.
It is. I think I've spent a little time in the Arctic, but I was up there once in December, and it was, I watched the last sunset for a month, and it was minus 60. And I had full polar gear, which I'm sure you probably had when you went to the North Pole. And these guys were in wool.
I know. What strikes me about Erebus's voyage at that time was this was a big expedition with a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they spent the money on crockery and spoons, silver spoons and books and libraries and all that sort of thing. Yeah. But in the end, it didn't do them any good because they got stuck in ice, which was, I think the reason was it was so bad was that they had 2 of the coldest winters of the 19th century, and they couldn't get out in the summer. So 2 summers passed. I mean, you normally get out and go off and through the Northwest Passage with the band playing and all that. That never happened. So they were just trapped there. For me, the great Erebus's most successful expedition was the one down to Antarctica, because they did go there to places where no one had ever gone before. And this plucky little ship, the Erebus, it very much intrigued me.
And it comes up in your book, too, and it deserves stressing again and again that one of the problems with that voyage was just a complete lack of engagement with the local people, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And were you in touch with Louis Kamukak?
Yes, I met him. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just one of the proudest things I have is the medal that was given. The first Louis Kamukak medal was given to me, I think that last time when I was in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And that was something I really prize, not just for Louis himself. And we talked, and through John Geiger, I'd heard a lot from him. He gave me a lot of very interesting advice. And at one time, we were going to go on to I think it's King Edward Island ourselves. Yeah, with Louis. He's going to take us across.
Yeah.
But he did, as you rightly point out, represented the sort of importance of Inuit testimony from the moment, that the ships got icebound till right up to the present day when, the boats were found, the ships were found in exactly the place where the Inuit had said they were 150, 200 years ago. So, that was a theme that went through, and the fact that for all the silver cutlery and the books and all that sort of thing, and the clothing and the overcoats, the Franklin expedition made no real attempt to engage with the Inuit. I think 1 or 2 of them may have learned a few words, but it wasn't enough. And at certain points of the journey, if they'd been able to speak, they might have been able to get some food, which would help them.
For me personally, I loved all the Python, obviously, and then I wound up in my 20s when you started doing the travel series was really when I was getting wanderlust, and I wound up becoming a foreign correspondent for a bunch of years. And I think a lot of what you did and how you did it, and like pole to pole and around the world in 80 days, so much of how you went about that really sort of informed me, and I think a lot of people, on just how to be a person overseas. There's a real humanity to all of it that I think I really appreciated. And I'm trying to think back, and you said you really never interview a president of a country or anything like that.
No.
It's all local people. And so was that from the outset? Was that your thinking?
No, it evolved over the first 2 or 3 programs of Around the World in 80 Days. I didn't quite realize when I started off, I just signed up for going around the world. That was it. And I suddenly thought, what character am I supposed to be? How do I present myself on television? Am I an actor with the hinting at being sort of Phileas Fogg's and Passepartout, my team, and all that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Or was I supposed to be also a reporter like Alan Wicker or someone like that? And I realised I wasn't really cut out for that. He was a brilliant reporter. I was just a sort of cub reporter at the very least at that time. And I struggled a bit until we came up to the third episode, which, if you remember, was entirely shot on a dhow going down the Gulf from Dubai to Mumbai.
So we pass out of the Gulf of Oman and into the Arabian Sea. As the day grows hotter and the birds fewer, I dream verses of the ancient mariner.
We weren't supposed to get on that boat because things had gone wrong. They just had to get any boat that would take us. There was one where only one person in the crew of 18 spoke English. The rest were Gujarati fishermen. And we moved very slowly. And we kept thinking, God, this is the BBC series. We've got to keep moving. But we were bound to go on land and sea rather than fly. So there was no quick way out of it. And so we spent 7 days with these guys. Yeah. And I realised by the end of it, there was no point in trying to be somebody else. I think it was just me with them and reacting to them and a very different way of life. And what they liked was they liked you to be yourself. Yeah. And I found that the important thing was to engage with these fishermen, even though our worlds were completely separate. But I had to try and find the shared humanity, if you like. And so by the time we got off that ship into Bombay as it was then, called then, I was settled. I suddenly thought, hey, I'm just going to be me, responding to this. And the first thing we did, we got to a big hotel, might have been the Taj Hotel in Bombay. And I suffered from terrible missing the dhow and the people on it. And all the people in this hotel were it was back to normal, with rich people shouting at people who are, poor to carry their bags, people complaining about their rooms, cars drawing up and hooting and all that. I thought, this is not the world I want. I know why what happened on that dhow felt so good, because I was in touch with people that I rarely get the chance ever in my life to speak to, and it was very rewarding to speak to them.
And that was so successful, that section, too. I think it wound up making you made the series an extra episode, didn't you?
We did, absolutely. And I have to say, it was all down to an editor, because they were given instructions when we got home. There's got to be, 15 minutes for each each section and all that. And he looked at it, and I went in one day and he said, Michael, this is not going to fit into 15 or 10 minutes. I said, how much? Half an hour? I said, no, it's an entire program. It won't work unless you give it time. So good for him. Yeah.
The other one that really hit home for me was Pole to Pole. And part of it is you were on a rupture line, basically.
Yes, a sort of slightly artificial line, 30 degrees east longitude, I think, yeah.
But it went right through Russia and the Soviet Union was literally imploding. I think as you left, there was a coup, and then the Soviet Union fell apart. And
we do occasionally strike lucky, if you can call it that.
Yeah.
I think we were probably the last documentary crew ever to go through the Soviet Union. Yeah. Because by the time we got to Turkey, which was about 5 days or so after we'd left, there in the news was Gorbachev had gone and everything had changed. And we couldn't believe it. And we'd talked to people in Russia, in the Soviet Union, including a Ukrainian, who said, in my lifetime, or certainly in my children's lifetime, Ukraine will be independent. Yeah. And there it was. Within 3 months, Ukraine was independent. It carried on. I think in Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, who's one of the longest surviving and most respected African leaders, was overthrown the day we got into the country. So we have a record for doing this. And we were in Venezuela quite recently, just before Trump decided he wanted to go to Venezuela as well, or send some people in there.
I just actually watched that series, which was wonderful. I appreciated it because I didn't know much about Venezuela. And I watched it after Trump overthrew the government there. It just filled in that country for me, which is exactly what you do very well. There was a scene in there, too, that really struck me when you are talking to a woman who's taken the daughter or the son of a migrant.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're chatting with her. And the mother had to leave because there's no work, no money, and she can't support her child.
Yeah.
So But you got the mother on the phone,
Yes.
like on FaceTime in Miami or somewhere like that.
Yeah, that's right.
And just the connectivity now compared to when you were on that Dow, for instance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes.
You know, like you really disappeared back then compared to today.
I sometimes think that was better in some ways to totally disappear, because you had to make things up and you weren't continually getting feedback.
Yeah.
On the whole, it was good to be able to be in touch with family particularly. But I can remember early sort of iPhones and all that, being in Tibet, and we drove up from Nepal right up onto the top of the Tibetan plateau. Sensational scene up there as we looked out, a very clear day, and we could see the whole of sort of the Himalaya chain laid out with Everest at the heart of it. And I rang my wife and I just said, guess where I am? And she said, where are you? Slightly irritably. So I said, I'm in Tibet. I can see all the mountains of the Himalaya, great mountains of the Himalaya range. There must be 10 or 20 mountains of 24,000 feet, all in front of me. It's just fantastic. And she said, can you tell me where the tap is for the plumber to turn off the hot water? Because he's come round today and he can't find it. Where did you leave the key? And so it's not always the right moment. It's great to have the technology there, and certainly if someone gets ill or something like that. But basically, I quite enjoyed it when you were on very big old sat phones and you had to be in a certain position at a certain time.
My favorite story like that was I was based in Nairobi and I was in Somalia because Ethiopia had just invaded. A neighbor called me on my cell phone asking if my daughter was available for a play date, and I was...
Really?
Yes. Please call my wife. And,
I got that. I know what you mean. When we were in Venezuela, actually, about to do the first shot, which was me interviewing a journalist, as we walked into the main square in Caracas, and the phone rang. So, I'm sorry, I better answer this. And it was my window cleaner who said, can I come and do you Friday, Michael? I say, no, I'm in Venezuela, just about to start a documentary series. We sounded rather poncy, but still, that was the truth.
That's fantastic. But there is an element of being gone. Like when you were on that train, I think going down through Sudan, like you must have been completely out of touch with that, you know?
I don't know anywhere else in the world where you got a train of such character, not particularly good at timekeeping or anything like that.
No, left 2 days late.
For a start, it didn't leave until everyone in the whole world could get on. And then a lot of them sat on the roof throughout the journey, and it was boiling hot.
Roof class have their own catering. Everyone up here travels free, and there are plenty of punters willing to risk sun, sand, and sliding off into the desert.
This was the one train that connected Wadi Halfa with Khartoum, so it was a real adventure. And of course, we got so much more material than we would have got on a conventional train. I just actually sat on the roof and interviewed people up there.
Yeah.
I say talk to them, actually. I don't use the word interviewed much because that seems so very set up. And most of our encounters are shot in one take with we get what we can when we can get it. But the more spontaneous, the better.
Which is risky in some ways, right? There has to be. Are you working with much the same crew that you have been over the years?
Yeah. That's very important. I've worked with two crews. One was the crew that we did around the 180 days right through to Sahara, New Europe, Brazil, the big long journeys. Then after that, we stopped doing long journeys. The BBC weren't quite so interested. And then out of the blue, about 7 years later, Channel 5, one of the smaller companies in London, and ITN, who are the news gatherers, said that we've heard that you could get into North Korea at the moment. Things have calmed down a bit there. There's a kind of rapprochement. We'd love to see if you want to go there. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And we then got together a completely different crew. And they're the people who I've worked with on all these, what we call countries on the edge, where things are not quite as harmonious as they might be, like Iraq and Nigeria and Venezuela, really.
Yeah.
But that's only my second crew in all the travelling I've done. And it's very important to work with people who you get on with. It really is. And they have to share your own curiosity and your own sort of joy at travelling, which gets you through the bad moments and the the difficult times and the food poisoning and all that. But you have to believe it's really worth doing what we're doing the way we're doing it.
Yeah, North Korea, I did watch that series too. First of all, I have to say, Michael, your earlier tours, you always did go through places that were difficult. Now you seem to really just have honed in on difficult places.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what the thinking is there.
North Korea was difficult anyway. We knew that.
Yeah.
And to get anything out of North Korea was like putting your foot in a very big door that was slamming shut. You just had to get a little glimpse of whatever you could. And I think we got enough interesting stuff. But I liked the fact that this was a country which nobody really knew anything about, and nor did the North Koreans want the world to know much about it. So I think when we thought, let's do a second program, let's see if we've got one more in us. And we chose a country which had been through terrible times, which was Iraq. And of course, all the news media had moved away because once peace came, or sort of peace came to the country, no one was quite so interested. And I thought a really interesting way of looking at a country is looking at people after the war's over. Who's there? How do they live? It must have been as interesting if in Germany at the end of the Second World War. How do they survive in a place that's been bombed flat, thousands of them killed? But life has to go on. Children have to go to school. A new generation who know very little about the causes or the effects of the war are going to be growing up, and you've got to treat them as if everything's normal. And how do you do that? So that was rather the thought about Iraq.
I spent 3 days only in North Korea.
Yeah.
Which was fascinating. And people ask me to describe it, and I say it was the most stressful 3 days I've ever had without someone actually pointing a gun at me.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, did you feel in danger in any way?
No, I had to go in and get a story out in 3 days, and they made it almost impossible for me to do anything of interest.
Yes.
I'm sure like you, I had 3 minders who were just on me all the time, and anything I asked to do out of the ordinary, out of going to pay respect to the various leaders.
Yeah. You might as well have gone in and they might give you a sheet of A4 telling you what they wanted you to say. That would be as much as you could get. Yeah. So I know what you mean, and I think we felt anything a little bit more that we can get, the better. And they wanted to show us one restaurant because that was the place where they thought it looked good and smart. And we said, we don't want that. Where do ordinary Koreans, North Koreans eat? It took a huge battle, but eventually, because we had a very good fixer, he found us a place where just there were North Koreans eating. We didn't have to talk to them all and all that. It was just like suddenly you felt this place is normal in some ways and could be much more normal and better in many other ways.
They spent a lot of time trying to get me to eat dog. They called it the sweet meat. That's what I was.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I actually ate dog knowingly, but I might well have done.
But you actually got to travel the country a fair bit. I didn't get out.
We did, actually, going up to the north and Mount Pektu and all that. That was, it was quite something. Yeah. That's where we saw the dark side, I think. I remember going up there and we arrived, and the plane arrived quite late, and we were driven through the forest in darkness. And it seemed impenetrable, and suddenly I saw lots of lights ahead. And I looked out the window, and there were a whole lot of people, a large workforce, digging trenches, laying pipes. This must have been about 9 o'clock at night. And presumably they worked all night. Yeah. And in the end, they built this ski resort, which someone sent me a photo of it a few years ago. It looks absolutely fantastic. But you could see that it was slave labor was being used. Yeah. Frightening.
I think you cracked through to your translators there, didn't you, or your minders with some Python clips or something in the end?
Yeah, they were really nice. But 2 things happened. One was Su Yang, who was a 28-year-old, very bright lady, and very much on best behaviour, would only ask you certain questions. If you strayed and tried to talk about your own country or the rest of the world, no, she would shut down. But there was one day when we were going up a rocky gorge, and the minders, there are 2 guides, and then the minders, who was a lot of guys in heavy overcoats, and they decided they couldn't walk up this any further, and they let us go on. And we went on, and we interviewed Su Yang without anybody else being present. Oh, wow. And she talked about how she'd read Wordsworth and English books, the sort of 19th century books and all that sort of thing. And I was able to ask her, I said, we talked a little bit about London. I said, in England, we are allowed to criticise our leaders. We can say what we want about them. And I thought I nearly got through, but then she said, yes, that's what makes you different. End of story. But we did at one point, my director, we were stuck at an airport for a long time, nothing came in, and she'd been asking what I did back home and all that, and he had the fish slapping dance from Monty Python. And he showed her this dance. And it was really great, a really unguarded moment, because the great thing about humour, again, a very good tool when you're travelling, is that it's spontaneous. And people can't stop themselves laughing, really, if they've seen something funny. And she just burst out laughing in a way I've never seen her laugh before. She then did say to me, "Oh," with a big sort of gasp, "yeah, so this is what you do." I said, not so much nowadays.
Did that make an appearance in Venezuela too? Because you got a run in Venezuela.
We were, I think the word is detained, but it felt like an arrest. When we were filming in Hugo Chavez's birthplace, and for some reason, someone had thought we were misbehaving or filming things we shouldn't have filmed. And in the end, very heavy security guys came in, all with rifles and night goggles and everything, and really all in black. Quite a frightening team. And they ordered us to open all our bags. They photographed everything. And then we sat in a restaurant waiting to be fed. It was about 8 hours after we'd set out that morning. And one of them asked who I was. They said, he's Michael Palin, he's a comedian from England. So he looked me up on YouTube. And what they got on YouTube was a very strange 1979 clip of myself and John Cleese defending the life of Brian against a bishop and Malcolm Muggeridge. And I've never been quite so angry on television ever. Yeah. So this guy looked over at me and said, he's not very funny, which is entirely understandable. But then I said, well, look up some of Monty Python. And they found the fish slapping dance, and that was great, because they couldn't resist that. And all their rifles shook, and they had to take off their night goggles and mop their brows. And they knew then that we were safe.
That is fantastic.
So always travel with a fish slapping dance in your bag if you can.
I think that was one of your favorite sketches, even before it was bailing you out of difficult places, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think if people ask what's funny about Monty Python, they say, just watch the fish slapping dance. There's no reason to it. It doesn't mean anything. It's not about anything. It lasts at best about sort of 50 seconds. But there's something perfect about it. I don't know quite what it is. I do have some ideas. I could write a thesis on what's so good about it, but it just works.
Give us the summary of the thesis.
The thesis was that we did it in a very military style. That was the thing. So it wasn't just ordinary civilians. It was like something you might learn at Sandhurst Military College. And we were all very much serious about it. And when I'd finished slapping John with the pilchards, John brings his great fish out, and rather than just hitting me with it, he does a very brilliant bit of just lining it up by my head, then going back, and then whack, which is, again, like a military manoeuvre. So that was the second thing. And the third thing was that during the rehearsal for the filming, we were beside a lock in a canal near London. And we'd rehearsed with the lock full, and suddenly, when it came to the take, I realised the lock had emptied. There was a 15-foot drop into the water, and I had to make a decision then and there to say, no, let's wait. But I just said, let's go with it. And we went with it. And I must say, it's one of the finest falls I've ever done, really. And so that was the third thing that made it special. Make sure it's painful.
Yeah, you absolutely disappear. Really.
Yeah.
Just to go back to the lumberjack sketch, what do you remember about that and the origins of that?
I remember that Terry Jones and myself, who worked together, spent all day on a sketch about a sort of murderous barber who was cutting people's hair with scissors and things. He obviously wanted to do something else with the scissors, and he was having to control himself as he was talking about the football, where really his hands were shaking. He was getting very sweaty and hot. We thought that's quite a funny idea, a homicidal barber. But where do we go? And the main thing about Python, we decided not to have punchlines on every sketch. If there wasn't one, go on to something else. But where do you go from there? And I think I suddenly came up with the idea, I never wanted to be a barber, I wanted to be a lumberjack. And that's how it came about. And Terry and I were very relieved, and we wrote the lumberjack song in about 20 minutes, because late at the end of the day, we'd had such a bad time writing, we were looking forward to going to have a pint in the Washington Arms next door to me. And so it suddenly all fell into place. And the writing of it was one of those things that just poured out in virtually the right way. We didn't have the music much, but a very nice guy called Fred Tomlinson, who had a group of singers who appeared on the programme every now and then. And in the end, where the Mount is, he put the song in.
You had the Mountie Choir. Yeah. Are there any of the films that you look back on with particular fondness?
If you look at the Python films, I would have to say Life of Brian was the most successful of them.
Yeah.
I don't mean in earnings, because I don't know if it was, but somehow the script, the performance, the art direction, and Terry Jones's own direction of the comedy in it.
Did you say ex-leper? That's right, sir. Well, what happened? Oh, cured, sir. Cured? Yes, some bloody miracle, sir. God bless you. Well, who cured you? Jesus did, sir. I was hopping along, minding my own business. All of a sudden, up he comes, cures me. 1 minute I'm a leper with a trade, next minute my livelihood's gone. Not so much as a by your leave. You're cured, mate.
It was really good. I saw it again the other day on a big screen, and I thought, oh, God, I'm not going to watch this. I've seen it so often. Yeah, it's absolutely new and refreshing. I suddenly noticed lots of little things that you don't see first time, which was very much a Python trademark. It didn't just have two people talking. Something was going on behind. Yeah. Someone was swinging on a rope or something like that. Yeah. I just remember one sketch we did on the show, which was it was merely a sort of a newsreader about one of those things where they have big music and the camera sweeps down up to the face of the newsreader. And as the camera swept down, there's a huge sign said, "Is the Queen sane?" A question mark. But you really don't see it at all, unless it's about the third or fourth time, because you're looking at the newsreader. So little things like that. And it was suburban homes where instead of pictures on the walls, there were cuts of steak, things like that, nailed up.
I saw it in a theater in Dublin in the late 80s, like 80. And I think it had just been unbanned by the Irish government at that point. So I saw it, and it was a packed theater, I think, of people seeing it probably for the first time.
There's nothing better for marketing than a ban. It assures you that there's going to concentrate an awful lot of people who hate bans and going to see it, whatever it is.
That was a very successful movie for you then.
Yeah, I think it was successful because we'd written it quite carefully, despite what the Bishop of Malcolm Muggeridge thought. It wasn't sixth-rate student comedy. We thought quite a lot about what was happening generally in the world, and there are bits of it, I think, which is quite prescient in a way. A lot of debate about women's rights and all that sort of thing. When one of them wants to be a woman. Now, why do you want to be a woman, Stan? I think there was substance there. It was also very funny throughout and had a good ending.
It did. Amazing song.
And always look on the bright side of life. Come on.
Eric's song, very good indeed, yeah.
And I just think of lines like, he's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy.
He's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy. Now go away!
Terry Jones, as Brian's mother, was,
sensational. Ah, my dear Terry. Yeah, I loved in that same scene. That's the wonderful bit. He said, "You're all individuals."
You've got to think for yourself. You're all individuals. Yes, we're all individuals. You're all different. Yes, we are all different.
And the little voice at the back says, "I'm not." And they'll turn around and say, "Shh." Which I think is a wonderful way of turning things on its head.
Yeah, it's so incredibly creative. Yeah.
Yeah, very liberating thing to do.
I just watched Brazil again, too, for the first time in a long time on a big screen. Oh, and that still holds up beautifully.
It does, yeah.
What do you remember about being on that set?
I can remember thinking that this is quite you've got to play it seriously for the comedy to come out. And I was playing a torturer.
Yeah.
And there's no wacky torturers really, but you had to somehow be aware that you were present in a scene where there was comedy, but only if you played it absolutely. We did the scene where Jonathan Pryce discovers I'm a torturer, which comes in the middle of the film, but we shot it on the first day for some reason, which I think was very bad planning, because nobody kind of knew each other, the crew were all new and all that. And Terry had to say eventually, I think we didn't do that quite right, Michael. Let's do it again. And this time it made it into much more of a scene with Christmas presents everywhere and all that. And Terry's daughter, Holly, played my daughter. So you had me as a torturer with his loving daughter opening presents, yet still being one of the nastiest people on the planet. So it's quite good. And I enjoyed I had a lovely suit, I remember that. The scenes were 1950s. The costumes were 1950s, and I had a really sharp suit and a fedora.
His sense of design in those films is incredible, isn't it? Like your torture chamber is like this huge domed kind of with this little platform in the middle.
It was a cooling tower.
Yeah.
In South London, and the day Robert De Niro shot me and killed me. Which would go down on my CV as one of the great things, like the fall in Fish Slapping Dance, being shot by Robert De Niro. That is quite something, because he definitely was my hero as growing up, as watching films. He was the actor I wanted to be like.
Yeah, Godfather and Taxi Driver. What was he like to work with?
Quite. Well, it was very interesting because we were there, and this is just an industrial plant in South London. It wasn't anywhere particularly show busy or anything like that. So we were in a little sort of porter cabin having our cups of tea, and I kept wanting to ask him all these things about all the films he'd done, and it's quite difficult to find just the right moment. And Bobby De Niro is not looking for praise at all or anything like that. He's quite quiet and introverted and all that. But he would just say, "Oh, it's foggy today. It's always foggy in London." I said, "No, that's not true, actually. London's air's quite good, but it's just today is bad." "How many days do you get this fog then?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I would say maybe, a month a year or something like that, or slightly less." "Yeah, that's a lot of fog." And we ended up just spending the whole lunchtime talking about the weather in London. I never once asked him about how much weight he lost in Raging Bull and all those things I was desperate to ask him. But that's the way it is.
That's him adapting to the environment, because what else do you talk about in London other than the weather?
I would think someone like Robert De Niro, with his enormous experience and many different characters, would find some new aspect of London.
Oh, my goodness. I don't want to take all your time, and I could go on forever, honestly. You're now 82, and Venezuela was phenomenal. Is the plan just to keep continuing on with these?
Yeah, it is. I never want to say stop, and I never want to retire, and I'm always aware that I'm extraordinarily fortunate to be able to go around the world, go to countries in the world, and be looked after. That's the great thing. If I went on my own to Venezuela or Iraq or Nigeria, I probably wouldn't get insurance to leave London anyway. But I'm taken there, I'm looked after. You get to do some amazing things, like going behind a thunderous waterfall in Venezuela on very slippery stone.
I've never been near to such colossal power, that's all I can say. I'm 81, I shouldn't be here. I should be in bed.
Which, I mean, you wouldn't be allowed to go anywhere near that in England. The health and safety would say, no, you've got to stay indoors and hang on to these railings. So it's a great release to be able to do that, and it makes you feel that although you're 82, actually, if you look after yourself reasonably well, and the motivation is there, and you're enjoying what you're doing, you can do it the same way you could when you were in your 30s or 40s. So I'm hoping that will carry me through the next journey, which we'll be doing in about 3 weeks' time.
Yeah. Well, look at David Attenborough, right? There is no...
I look at David with such envy. I know him reasonably well. And he knows I have to ring him up. He did it just on the age of, he's 99 and a half, a lovely series called Wild London, where he's just in the parks in London, and he's very nice, casual, chatty way, picking up ordinary animals that we see in the park and all that, and telling you about them. It's a wonderful thing to do. And he's 99 and a half. I said, David, you've got to stop, otherwise we're all going to look hopeless. We can't keep up. Yeah. He always says to me, so you do people, I do animals. So that's
fair enough. And just to bookend this with the space mission.
Yes.
Did you ever have a desire to go into space? Was that, I know William Shatner did it. Was that?
Yeah, no, I didn't, unfortunately. I love the idea of being able to see our world from outer space, because that looks absolutely fantastic, and the pictures that came back from the Apollo missions and just the things they take from the space station now, it looks very beautiful, and I think that would be absolutely stunning. But the training for it, the technical side, I'd be hopeless. I'd press the wrong button and eject myself at the wrong moment or something like that. But I feel very much that my work I'm happiest when I can get around on my own 2 feet on terra firma.
So you've been to Canada several times. I asked people when they come on the podcast if they have a favorite place they've been to in Canada.
I'm trying to think, really, because there's lots of places I've been to. But when we were in Toronto doing our Python shows, and they were really working well, and there was a real buzz to it, I very much enjoyed that. But then I also enjoyed being up in the far north and realising what a vast country it is, and the limitations still of being able to manoeuvre your way through these inlets and fjords. And you get a huge respect for nature and the climate and all that sort of thing. And so many other parts of the world, you can just sort of press a button and it'll all work out. But when you're up there, you have to work with great respect for the elements. And one of the greatest things, I did an Arctic plunge. I did actually go and submerge myself in the Arctic Ocean.
Wow.
And I was pleased about that. Yeah, that's my great experience. That and fish slapping dance, both involving water, you understand.
And plunges.
I'm an aquatic performer.
One of our big fundraisers we do every year with Canadian Geographic is a polar plunge, where we get otherwise sensible people right across the country to jump into freezing water during a march. So if you feel up to it, you do it in London as well.
Oh, no, I think you'd have to come to Northern Canada where I'd have to do it. That's what you can boast about, just jumping in the Thames. Yeah. You don't have to break the ice or anything there. But I must say it's one of those moments where I used to find it's like people who do cold water swimming. You probably do that yourself, do you? Yeah. You look fit and all that. And I just say, they go on and on about it. Oh, we've just spent sort of 20 minutes underneath the North Sea in January. And I say, oh, come on. And yet when I'd done the polar dive, the Arctic plunge, I was intolerable for at least 3 hours, telling everybody, oh yeah, I've done that, I've been there, done that, yeah. So I can understand it's one of those things that gets into your system, and
it does.
It must make you feel terrific and slightly, am I right, superior to us, the rest of us.
So we have a sauna and a plunge hole. I'm on a lake here north of Ottawa, and
oh, nice.
So we cut a hole and we keep a hole open, and we do it. And the way I describe it to people is every cell in your body is singing almost when you come into that water. Yeah. It's like an amazing feeling. And, yeah. And
you make me feel I've let my cells down. Yeah.
One of my favorite documentaries is called The Ponds, and it's about the ponds in Hampstead Heath, where there's there's a group of people who swim year round. And
I walk around the ponds, but I don't jump in. Yeah.
They were a collection of very happy people, I have to say.
Yes, they are. They're living in a nice place anyway, so
Hampstead is not a bad place.
Yeah, it's a nice part of town.
And finally, we're in odd times right now. What's giving you hope these days? Yeah.
My hope comes from my feeling that people want to live together, and they want to live peacefully together. And most people I've spoken to around the world, the things that unite them are hospitality, friendliness, understanding, similar interests, whether it be music or whatever. Wherever you go in the world, that's mainly what sustains people. Yeah. And I think I've seen people in the most difficult situations, and I think of people now in Gaza and all that. How on earth do they survive? And I think in many cases people survive because, that's their instinct, and they become inventive, and they become clever, and they become very skillful at doing with very little. And I've learned, as I go around the world, to admire people like that, people who have very little, rather than people who have an awful lot, like myself. So that sustains me, and that makes me feel whatever country, whatever the headlines whipped up in the newspaper or online or in the media and all that, which are usually negative, the whole place is falling apart, whatever. I think you have to be careful not to succumb to that, because that's just a way of selling newspapers or paint or whatever they sell.
Get out and spend time with people, spend time in nature, I always say, and get off your phone.
Yes, absolutely. And see things for yourself and talk to people who are real people there opposite. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all your time.
That's good. It's a pleasure. Very nice to talk to you. And I can feel how healthy you are living up in the pond north of Ottawa.
Yeah, it is.
But I'm near Hampstead Ponds, so it's okay. I can walk around them and
you walk around.
Pretend I put my
about going in.
Yeah, put my toe in. Yeah.
Fantastic, Michael. Thanks for being on the Explore podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, if you hadn't guessed already, that was one of my white whale moments. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Good Lord, what a delight getting to talk with Michael Palin for an hour. And he's a polar plunger. So don't forget to go to rcgs.org/polar plunge 2026 to sign up or to donate to the Canadian Geographic Polar Plunge. It's the coolest fundraiser on the planet. Until next time, when we'll explore again, I'm David McGuffin.
Finland, 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 the country where I want to be, pony trekking or camping, or just watching TV. Finland, 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 it's the country for me. You're so near to Russia, so far from Japan, quite a long way from Cairo, lots of miles from Vietnam. Finland, 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 the country where I want to be, eating breakfast or dinner, or snack lunch in the hall. Finland, 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 Finland has it all. Finland has it all.